While the axial skeleton protects the brain, heart and lungs, and spinal cord, the appendicular skeleton helps us move. The appendicular skeleton is made up of the upper and lower limbs. We usually call them arms and legs. It's also made up of the girdles of these limbs. The girdles attach the limbs to the axial skeleton. All the bones in the appendicular skeleton help us move and allow us to manipulate our environment.
Also, bear in mind that when we're talking about the appendicular skeleton, we're talking about duplicates. The bones of the legs, arms, girdles all have duplicates on the other side of the body. This is known as bilateral symmetry.
Region 1, upper limbs.
One of the many important bones contained in the appendicular skeleton is the pectoral girdle. The pectoral girdle is also called the shoulder girdle. So remember, even though we're only describing one pectoral girdle, there are two in your body because you have two shoulders.
The pectoral girdle attaches the upper limb to the trunk of the body and also anchors muscles that move the limb. Each girdle is made up of two bones, the clavicle and the scapula. The clavicle, or collarbone, is the anterior bone. The scapula, or shoulder blade, is the posterior bone.
You have 30 bones in each upper limb, each one of them useful, each one of them special in its own way. Why, without the 27 bones of your hand, you'd never be able to play an exciting game of skee-ball. And without the humerus, the radius, and the ulna, you'd never be able to carry home those exciting prizes you won playing skee-ball. Exciting prizes like whoopee cushions and decorative magnets.
I don't play skee-ball.
Well, you should. It's exciting, but not half as exciting as an in-depth discussion of the bones in our upper limbs.
As we said before, each of your upper limbs contains 30 bones, broken down into 3 parts: the arm, the forearm, and the hand. And these 3 regions can be broken down into individual bones. So let us now take advantage of the knowledge and experience of our elders as we turn to the Old Person's Learning Annex to learn about bones in the upper limbs.
It's the Old Person's Learning Annex, where we learn from the wisdom of our elders.
They say that the upper arm contains one bone, the humerus. It is the largest and longest bone in the upper limbs. Well, I will tell you, I do not find a lot of humor in this bone. It is not a funny bone. It is not funny at all. You see, the knee, that is a funny bone. You get hit in the knee, and it goes, ugh, and you go, oi, and you kick, and it's a funny thing.
The upper arm contains only a single bone, the humerus, whereas the forearm contains the radius and the ulna. The proximal ends of the radius and ulna, that's the ends closer to the trunk of the body, those ends connect with the humerus to form the elbow. Their distal ends, you know, the ends further from the trunk, they connect with the hand to form the wrist.
And now, the Old Person's Learning Annex, where long-winded stories serve us well.
I remember when my son Herb broke all 27 bones in his hand. I remember it like it was yesterday. He was 4. He's 32 now, and he's an accountant. He's so very, very good. Herb was out playing carpenter with his cousin Murray. Anyway, Murray, being the cute little idiot that he is, he took a ball-peen hammer and smashed Herb's hand. That's right. He broke all 8 carpals, all 5 metacarpals. Those are the 5 long bones that form the palm, and he broke all 14 phalanges. That's the fingers in the thumb.
So the hand is made up of 8 carpals, 5 metacarpals, and 14 phalanges. The 8 carpals are the bones that form the wrist, where we put our watches and bracelets. The 5 metacarpals make up the palm, and the 14 phalanges give us our fingers and a pollex, which is a fancy word for thumb.
There's the shoulder girdle, made up of the clavicle and scapula. And then there's the humerus, ulna, radius, 8 carpals, 5 metacarpals, 14 phalanges, and a whole lot of love.
And that's it for the upper limbs of the appendicular skeleton.
Region 2, lower limbs.
Now, some might argue that the body's lower limbs are more important than its upper limbs. These guys, for instance.
The lower limbs are far more important than the upper limbs.
No, they're not.
I'll get you like a fire!
Well, regardless of which set of limbs is more important, the pelvic girdle is the cornerstone of all lower limbs. You probably know the pelvic girdle as the hip, but you probably don't know it personally, so let us explain. The pelvic girdle attaches the lower limbs to the trunk of the body. It's also a point of attachment for the muscles that move the lower limbs, and it even protects sensitive organs like the urinary bladder.
The pelvic girdle is made up of two bones called os cocci, which connect posteriorly with the sacrum and the coccyx. You remember the sacrum. It's a division of the vertebral column. Each os coxa is made up of three bones, the ilium, the pubis, and the ischium.
The ilium forms the major superior or upper section of the os coxa, or where you rest your hands on your hips when you're preparing for a big cowboy gunfight.
The pubis forms the anterior and inferior, or lower front, section.
And finally, the ischium forms the posterior and inferior portion of the os coxa. This ischium is the bone you sit on when you sit.
Now the pubic arch is the angle between two pubic bones. It is inferior to the pubic symphysis, a joint that connects the two pubic bones. But don't worry about joints now. We'll talk about them later.
The pubic arch can be used to identify a person's sex. This is because the angle of the pubic arch in males is less than 60 degrees, and the angle in females is greater than 80 degrees. The pubic arch has a wider range in females.
Now, all the pubic girdle details aside, let's discuss the lower limbs, dude.
The lower limbs each contain 29 bones.
That's a lot of bones!
The lower limbs support the entire weight of an erect body. They have to be much stronger than the upper limbs so we can use them for jumping, running, walking, and devastating karate moves.
The lower limbs are separated into three regions: the thigh, the leg, and the foot.
The only bone in the thigh is the femur, which is the largest, longest, and strongest bone in the body.
The leg is made up of the tibia or shin bone and the fibula. Only the tibia bears the weight of the body, which is transmitted from the femur to the foot. The proximal end of the tibia, or top part, articulates with the femur to form the knee joint, which is protected by the knee cap, or patella. The distal, or lower end of both the tibia and fibula connect with the foot to form the ankle.
Notice any similarities? The femur is like the humerus of the arm, both long, both durable. The tibia and fibula are like the lower limb versions of the radius and ulna, and the ankle is like the wrist.
Next up, the foot contains 26 bones in 3 different regions. Those regions are the tarsals, the metatarsals, and the phalanges.
The tarsals are 7 bones that form the ankle. The metatarsals are 5 bones that form the arch of the foot. Finally, the phalanges are 14 long bones that form the toes. There are 3 bones in each of the 4 little toes and 2 in the big toe, or some call it the hallux.
And that's it for the lower limbs.